Between 1999 and 2006, 6 women were strangled, found dead in Ipswich. They were the victims of Steve Wright. This is the case of the Suffolk Strangler. Victoria was a 17-year-old sixth form student from Felixstowe, attended Orwell High School. She was hoping to study sociology. She was considered a perfect person who was always laughing and joking. Her best friend Gemma Adams described her as more like a sister than a best friend. She was an A-level student who disappeared in the early hours of September the 19th, 1999, while walking home from Bandbox nightclub. Her naked body was found near a water-filled ditch in Stowmarket, or near Stowmarket, over 20 miles away from where she was last seen, and 5 days later from her last sighting. Stephen Hall, Victoria Hall's brother, read out a statement prepared by Victoria's father. In 1999, we were a normal family, and then Steve Wright came along and took Victoria from us. The pain of the week that followed will be with us forever. The waiting, not sleeping for what seemed like an inevitable outcome. We finally have justice for our Victoria, but this will not bring her back. This is the end of the police involvement, but it will never be over for us. But we have learnt to live with it. I miss Victoria every day and will do so for the rest of my life. On October the 30th, 2006, Tania Nicol disappeared. Her remains were found in a stream at Copdock on December the 8th. Her friends remembered her as quiet, but she stood out from the rest. She was well turned out with aspirations to be a pop star. She fell in with the wrong crowd, and after meeting her new boyfriend, she started skipping school, and she also stopped going to sea cadets. She had also started smoking cannabis. After leaving school, she went from one low-paid job to another, became addicted to drugs and started to need better-paying work. She started working in Cleopatra's in Ipswich, which was a massage parlour which offered extras. She was pretty, friendly, honest and reliable. She was sacked due to her drug dependency, which made her go onto the streets. She lived in a flat near her dad down the road from her. Her drug dependency meant she couldn't keep paying the rent. So as a result of that, she moved back in with her mum. They then discovered that she was doing heroin. That's her parents discovered she was doing heroin. This was because her father, Jim Duell, found a syringe on the windowsill. Tania told them she had gone to get a prescription for methadone. She had been arrested at the age of 18 for prostitution, but her parents didn't know at that stage that she was working as a prostitute. And her father thinks they should have been told at that point. Somebody called Tom Stevens, who later would give a false confession to murdering these people, would give her a lift into town. So that was somebody who was well known to them. Sex workers, not called prostitutes these days. The book I'm getting most of this information from is one I will put an image up because I can't remember the name of it, but it was written by David Wilson, who is a well-known Scottish on television quite a lot on true crime things, in conjunction with a journalist that I can't remember the name of, but I've put the thing so you can see what it's from. So when I refer to prostitutes, I know times have moved on and they're now called street workers. For the purpose of this, I'll carry on calling them prostitutes because I think that's more specific as well. Sex workers these days could mean somebody who works on OnlyFans, so I'm going to call them prostitutes for the purpose of this video. Anyway, Tom Stevens would wait for her and talk to the other girls. So he'd wait to talk to other girls that were working on the streets at the time. If any needed a lift to score drugs or be picked up from a punter, he would oblige. Sometimes they paid him money, other times sexual favours. So on the 3rd of October, Tania left her house. She had lost about a stone over the last year due to her drugs use, and people had noticed her losing weight. Also, her complexion had gotten spotty again due to the heroin abuse. She shared the house with her mum Kerry and her 15-year-old brother, and she headed along Wolverston Close. It was a walk she'd done since she was a schoolgirl. She got the bus at 10:45 and her mother called her while she was out. By 11 p.m, she was walking along the red light district. She was caught on CCTV as she passed Sainsbury's garage on London Road. The following morning, her mother called into her bedroom to see that she hadn't slept in her bed. So Kerry, who was Tania's mother, dialed phone numbers Tania had called, and Tom Stevens was one, so he's the one I mentioned earlier. Stevens phoned her back that evening. Stevens phoned her mother phoned for Tania that evening, I presume on the landline, and Kerry said she was still in bed. And then the following morning, her mother woke to see that she hadn't slept in her bed. So she dialed Tom Stevens at that point. Called the next day, and she said she was thinking of phoning the police service, and Stevens suggested that she did. I think due to her lifestyle, the police let it go over that weekend of 4th and 5th of November. Kerry kept trying Tania's phone, and a public appeal went out on the Tuesday. Detective Chief Inspector John Quinton said, "We're extremely concerned for Tania's welfare because of her lifestyle and the fact that she is known to work as a prostitute. We are also interested in any previous or current associations with whom she had regular contact and who may have an idea of where she might be." On the 2nd of December 2006, Trevor Saunders strolled down Belstead Brook. Trevor was a water bailiff. He was checking for blockages, and he saw two legs of what he thought at the time was a mannequin. He then realised it was a body, naked apart from a pair of earrings. He rang the main house where he worked and said, "I think I found a body." Gemma Adams. She was 25 and disappeared in November 2006. Her body was found in a stream at Hintlesham. She always had her mobile phone. When her parents rang, she often let it ring out, and her flat was at Blenheim Road. She got a text from her mum and dad every morning, and over the past 2 weeks she'd been checking her mobile to see if Tania was okay, because she was friends with Tania. She'd seen her picture on the TV a few times since she'd gone missing. She was worried about her, but she still went to head out into Ipswich on the 14th of November. She'd been working as a prostitute for a few years, and she, like Tania, had worked for Cleopatra's over the summer, so I assume that's where they knew each other from. Obviously, Cleopatra's was safer than the streets, and CCTV had been installed for staff safety. However, Gemma wasn't happy with the big cut that Cleopatra's would take from her, so she decided to go on her own and just go onto the streets because she could make more money that way. And so she started, before going right onto the street, she started to see her massage clients privately. Clients felt like she was different. I think she was from more of a middle-class type background, so she probably had a bit of more of a middle-class type air about her, so I think that's why they found her different. And her long-time boyfriend was called John Simpson, and she went with him to Handford Road. So yeah, she had grown up in the well-to-do area of Kesgrave. So like I said, she was from a very middle-class background. If she wasn't at Brownie's, she was taking piano lessons or having horse riding lessons. So horse riding, piano, quite expensive hobbies. She was intelligent and popular, and was unaware of how pretty she was. She left school at 16 to take a GNVQ in health and social care at Suffolk College. Her parents thought she might join the police. Again, a boyfriend leading her down the wrong path. So from the moment she met her boyfriend, her life would change direction. And then she started with cannabis at parties. To originally have a job at an insurance company, but her drug habits meant that she eventually lost her job. She failed to turn up, and when she did arrive, she wasn't in a fit state. Heroin had begun to take control of her life, forced Gemma into prostitution. Her father, Brian Adams, said she wanted to sort herself out. For a time she was on a course of methadone, but soon went back on the heroin. We never knew she was working as a prostitute until she went missing. If we had known, we would have done everything in our power to stop her, just like we tried to get her off drugs. So after she started going on heroin and on the game, she started to distance herself from her family, I guess, because she was embarrassed. When John left her on that fateful day, he said he'd call her later. It was 10 p.m. when she would get to her first customer. He pulled up at 10:30 on London Road. He didn't want full sex, so just £15. At 11:20, another pulled up shortly after midnight. Full sex cost £30. Just before 1 a.m, she was back. The next was oral for £20. Then she went to Copdock. By 12:45, she was back outside BMW garage on West End Road. Her final client would be her last ever. 2 hours later, at 2:55 a.m, police took a call from a man to say his girlfriend hadn't contacted him. He said the last time he saw her was 10 p.m. on Handford Road. She didn't call him later, and she hadn't come home either. The police informed her parents she was missing and had been working as a prostitute. They asked her parents to identify the body. Her mother and sister identified her. Gemma's brother Jack wrote on the website of the local paper, "Gem, you will never be forgotten. I know you're in a better place now, and I will always love you. The post-mortem was inconclusive. A car exhaust centre on Norwich Road was shut down after a call from a member of the public found discarded trainers similar to Gemma's. The dive team were working at the brook in Copdock, section of the brook running parallel to Mill Lane, leading up to Copdock Mill. Covered with twigs and branches and film was the naked body of another young woman. The police told Tania's family that another body had been found. Her father went to ID her. Then, when he turned up, I believe this is how it happened. The father turned up to identify the body, and then the police said no one could do it. I presume her body was too decomposed, so they used fingerprints as identification, and that confirmed it was Tania. I assume due to her previous arrest that they had her fingerprints on record, so they could match her fingerprints of her corpse with the fingerprints when she was arrested for prostitution. Anneli Alderton was 24 when she was found in woods at Nacton on the 10th of December 2006. She was 3 months pregnant, and she said goodbye to her mum. She walked to the railway station. Her father died of lung cancer in 1998 when she was 16. Her mum called her Annie for short. So she went with her mum to Cyprus in 1992 because her parents split up at that point, and mastered the Cypriot language very quickly. From 14, she would go back to Ipswich to see her father during the school holidays. She enrolled in Copleston High School in Ipswich. She had ambitions of becoming a model and got good grades. After her father died, she became rebellious and she fell in with the wrong crowd, which I think can be quite common if someone loses a parent at a young age, impressionable age. It can send them off the rails, especially if they're not expecting it. Her mother returned to the UK and tried to get Annie to kick her drug addiction. Annie had turned to prostitution and spent time in prison 4 times between 2000 and 2006. After her first release, she moved back in with her mother. Initially, she was very relaxed and pictured a bright future. She was determined to get away from the drugs that had led her into the prostitution. However, that wasn't to be. The pull of the heroin too much for her. On the street, she was known as Crackhead Annie, so I guess her drug use was quite apparent to anybody who saw her. She arrived at Harwick's Railway after 5:30 p.m. It was dark and cold. Sunday night, the train was quiet. She arrived at Manningtree Station. She had to take the underpass from there and boarded the train to Ipswich. Her body would lay undiscovered until the 10th of December. One driver looked at what he thought was a mannequin. The naked body of Anneli 10 metres from the side of the road and 30 minutes from the main entrance of Amberfield School. I'm assuming it's been 30 minutes walk. 2 days later, there was a press conference with Detective Chief Superintendent Stuart Gull where he confirmed her identity. For the first time, the pathologist managed to establish the cause of death. Detectives confirmed, these are his words from the press conference, detectives confirmed that the murdered woman is 24-year-old Anneli Alderton from Colchester. The body was removed from the site on the 11th of December and taken to Ipswich Hospital. A post-mortem examination carried out by Home Office pathologist Dr. Nat Carey last night revealed the cause of death was asphyxiation. And when her naked body was posed in the form of a crucifix, so that was with arms out, one leg up and one leg straight, is the general pose of a crucifix, so that's how she was found. Her 81-year-old grandmother summed up Anneli's life. She upset everyone at Christmas because she was a changed character with a terrible vocabulary. She was a perfectly nice little girl and had a happy upbringing. I was gobsmacked to hear that she was dead, but the Annie I knew as a little girl had died years before. She was a girl more sinned against than sinning, but became addicted to heroin. So obviously, having researched all these victims, Anneli seems the one to be most impacted by heroin abuse. The others were sort of managing it to a certain extent, but obviously were addicted, but I think she went downhill probably a lot more than the others. But unfortunately, they all met the same end. So next victim, Annette Nichols, who was 29 and found near Levington on December the 12th, 2006. And she was known as Nettie and also knew Gemma Adams. She was more fearful of being seen by someone she knew, as she was embarrassed to be working as a prostitute. She had an 8-year-old son, and 4 years earlier she had taken an NVQ's beautician course at Suffolk College. She was a qualified beauty therapist and planned to open her own business. She completed it at the age of 25 while bringing up her young son. Now, they don't say how she got into heroin. They don't mention a boyfriend in this case, but they just say she was always easily led. So whether she was just hanging around with the wrong crowd, somebody offered some heroin and she took it and then got addicted. Anyway, it says here that she was always easily led and she ended up on heroin. So within a couple of months of getting into heroin, she started working as a prostitute. She sometimes steal money from her clients, and her mother was taking care of her son. At the age of 29, the year that she died, her beautician dreams had evaporated. She had moved in with her boyfriend on Ravenswood Estate. Her first job of the night turned out to be her last. The naked body of Annette Nichols lay into the undergrowth between Felixstowe and Ipswich. Next victim, Paula Clennell. She woke up after sleeping on John Davis's floor all day, so he was an old age pensioner that had befriended her in a pub, and he looked after her, was like a father figure to her. There was no sex involved. He just sort of took pity on her and would let her stay overnight at his house as long as she didn't take any drugs while she was in his house. She was fine to come and go as she pleased. So she met him initially because she met him outside his local pub and asked him for a cigarette. They chatted for a while. The next day she invited herself back to his for coffee. He knew what she was and said she could use his home as long as she didn't do drugs there. Described her as great fun and more like a daughter who would help with the chores. Her 3 daughters had been taken into care when social services found out her heroin use. So she had 3 children who'd been taken into care, and she often contact with them by writing to them frequently, and she'd written them a card with an intention of putting a photo of herself in. She stole John's cigarette pack and headed out. When she was out to ply her trade, she found that there were TV crews around, and they soon started to talk to her. For the purposes of the interview, she called herself Kelly because she didn't want to identify herself. And if you were to watch the interview, which you can see online, see the back of her head and the journalist talking to her. So she didn't want to be identified physically, and also she gave a false name. She called herself Kelly. So she told on Anglia TV that she needed the money, but the murders had made her wary, and that Gemma's murder had made her sick. Gemma was a nice girl, always smiling. So there's a backstory to Paula which shows that she was really a nice, sweet girl before drugs got hold and she got involved in prostitution. So 8 years before all this, she had been in the local paper, for helping a pensioner who'd fallen and was injured. She called for an ambulance and waited for the ambulance to get there, so stayed with the woman that was injured while waiting for the ambulance to turn up. The pensioner had appealed for her mystery angel to come forward and thank her, so she went to the local paper to try and find this girl. Paula had contacted the paper to say it was her, and there was a photo taken and a nice article about it. She left home soon after this, and she lived a nomadic lifestyle, and she often said, due to her chaotic lifestyle and the drugs that had taken hold of her, that she didn't expect to live longer than 25, and she was right. She actually died when she was 24. Some prophecy there. I don't know how that works, but she seemed to know that she wouldn't be alive much longer. She was estranged from her parents and was at her boyfriend's house on the 9th of December. She left home with her friend to work and went to London Road. She knew the next punter well and had occasionally stayed at his place for the night. This was the last punter she would ever have. So basically this Steve Wright, a bit like the other person whose name I can't remember, Tom was it, who befriended the prostitutes. Steve Wright was another person who befriended the prostitutes, but then he had a malevolent intent, which he obviously appeared charming on the surface, and when it came down to it, he obviously was a psychopath, I assume. So the focus of the police investigation moved to Acton, where Anneli's body was found. She had been strangled. They then discovered the CCTV of her on the train, and it was the last sighting of her. Annette and Paula had already been reported missing. Their photos were all over the papers, and TV and Suffolk police had appealed. On 12th of December, a member of the public found the next victim's body. It was near the A14 on a patch of land by the railway. The police were called at 3:05 in the afternoon. The police helicopter found a second body. The two bodies were found within 40 minutes of each other. The police investigation found similarities with these women and earlier murders. There are some other murders that happened before 1999, so they looked into other murders. So 16-year-old Natalie Pearman, same surname as me, had worked outside Ferryboat Inn in 1992. The detectives reviewed that case and 4 others. So the 4 others were Mandy Duncan, Vicky Hall, Kelly Pratt and Michelle Bettles. So it wasn't until 2026 that Steve was convicted of Victoria's murder, but on the 19th of December 2006, evidence led to Steve Wright's arrest. Tiny flecks of blood were found on the back seats of his Ford Mondeo, which partially matched the DNA profile of murder victim Paula Clennell. Wright was found guilty of all 5 murders on the 21st of February 2008. At Ipswich Crown Court, Mr. Justice Gross sentenced Wright to life imprisonment, with the recommendation that he should never be released. On the 19th of March 2008, Wright appealed against his conviction. On the 2nd of February 2009, Wright dropped the appeal. He pled guilty to Victoria Hall's murder in February 2026, after advancements in DNA enabled him to be identified as the killer of Victoria. Anyway, that's all from me for now. I hope you found this case interesting. I'm trying to focus more on the victims and the perpetrators on the videos I'm doing, which is why I'm not discussing Steve Wright too much, because there's plenty of films, documentaries about him, podcasts. So I thought I'd try and focus on the victims more. Anyway, I hope you liked the content of this case and found it interesting. I'm Anne-Marie Pearman and hope to see you soon. If you do like my content, please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.